Now we are going to make a pen on the lathe. This is what's called a pen mandrel. Morse 2 taper, and then it's type A, I think. There's type A and B, and the one type's pretty darn standard for all the bushings. So what you need is the mandrel and a bushing, and this is a 7mm bushing. And what that means is when I make the kit and turn the pen down, the diameter of this bushing is exactly the diameter I want for the tip and the components. So as you can see, I actually want to, I've got 4 bushings here, I only need 3 of them. So I'm going to put 2 here to keep me away from the mandrel a little bit. I want to keep my orientation lined up and put that on there like that. And then I actually need 1 more bushing because my mandrel's a little bit long. I can undo it right here, and I could shorten it up, but just put a couple of these on there, won't hurt anything. So now I have mounted on the lathe, ready to go. Don't snug that up too much, just enough so these don't turn when it's turning. And then I've got to decide which end is going to be the pen tip end and the clicker end, and I generally put the tip over here and the clicker here when I turn. So let's go put that on the lathe and show you how that works. I've got my mandrel loaded up with my pen, and it just goes in that end, and it snugs right up. And then I've got my live center with a 60-degree tip here, and that point matches up right in there. So it goes in the tailstock, and then I'll bring the tailstock up close, not all the way, turn it in, snug it up, bring this in, bring it up a little bit so that my tools, I'll use various tools, but I'm going to start just with this little gouge. Stand back, make sure it clears. I'm at 900 RPMs. That's okay for this acrylic. So that means I can snug it up a little bit more. It came loose when I first started turning. I just anchor the tool, go right down the blank. I'll come back over here, go down the blank, come back out. And the idea here is gentle. Some people say they have trouble with acrylics chipping out, and I have had some plastics that chip out. These blanks I bought, they're fairly good. They don't chip out too much. If I was worried about it, I might put the skew on it. But for this, I'll just take nice gentle cuts, kind of start here and go down the blank, start here and go like that. So you can see, go whatever speed you're comfortable. Keep your tools sharp on acrylic. I'm starting to get around now. You can see these big long shavings coming off. The sound changes. Not quite round here yet. That's taking a cut, going fast. I could turn the speed up because I'm a little more comfortable with that, but it'll cut. So now we're nice and round. We just keep sliding down. And with the slimline kit, you've got a bushing in the middle, especially with a pencil or a pen. Pen, you don't necessarily have to have the bushing in the middle, but a pencil you do, unless we get to an advanced technique. I'm ready to sharpen. You can tell the easiest way to sharpen is to grab another tool that's sharp. This is just my same gouge, it's just a little bit bigger. And now you can practice, you can start to think about blending it down, like tapering it down to where you want the tip, because you're going to taper down to the tip, and then probably just round it down in the middle. I can also bring my tool rest in a little bit more now that I've squared it off. Keep the tools closer, they're a little safer. You don't necessarily like that chattering sound. That's a better sound. When you're chattering, you're probably getting rough chatter marks, which I am. Basically need to sharpen. Our change to the skew, we talked about the skew. Works really nice on pen blanks. My tool rest. Rough right there. Probably not the best way to do that, but work. I promised you a really good skew cut, and I'm not really getting it like that. So I just bring the scraper over. This will get rid of all those ridges. And I'm not really at my final diameter or destination yet, but I like to keep it nice and flat and looking good, so then the next cut has a better chance. Now it's taking nice light shavings off there. Alright, so the goal right now is to get down close to the bushings, maintain your shape. Well, some people will start putting beads and things in them. I generally make a simpler pen. Don't go lower than the bushings, because then the pen, you can tell it's just not going to look that good. And wow, that's going to be really dark on this one side. That's interesting. But I'll bring this tip right down in there. Kind of think about how your fingers would hold it. Bring the barrel a little bit more narrow. You always have a tendency to make the barrels too thick, especially with a slim line, because you've got such a small bushing you're trying to get to. But the acrylic will cut. Nice cuts like that. Sorry, it's really going slow on this video. Keep the barrels consistent, so I like the thickness there. I think I just about finished that tip. I know I'm a little big. I got one more shot at that tip, and I got a little bit of vibration. So I've got to go there without it chattering, without hearing it chatter. And this is the clicker end, so my mind can have a little bit more meat to it. Went to the grinder to sharpen for my last cut on my 3/4 inch Past experience has shown me that I've still got this a little bit too thick. Looking pretty good though. I've got kind of consistent angles here. Turned out to be really dark though, interestingly enough. Okay, so now acrylic sands just like everything else. So yeah, I got a really good cut on it, so I'm going to just shoot it with a little bit of 400. Of course I got to slow way down. I was up at 2,000. And the idea with sanding acrylic is run through, like I said here, 400. So I don't really want to shape or anything. I got my shape right. 400, 600, 800, 1,000, and then the micro mesh sets wet. So that's actually doing a pretty good job. Taking the few tiny little ribs out of it that I had. So I'll just fast forward through the sanding, turn it back on when we get to the final polishing. Alright, you can see I just hit 600 and I'm starting to get a pretty good looking polished shine on it. This is a little 800, which I think starts about into the micro mesh ranges. The difference with the micro mesh is it's finer guaranteed quality on the pieces. So micro mesh, what I'm talking about is this kit here starts at 1,500, 18, 24, 32, 36, 8,000, and then goes up to 12,000. I thought I would have a 12,000 here somewhere. And you sand that wet, and then between each sanding, it's a good idea to wipe it off. So I'll just get 1,500, get it wet. Sand it a little bit like that, and so on, all the way up. Each grade makes it just polish shine a little bit more. So that's what we've got while it sits on the lathe, all shined up and basically ready to go. So now we can jump right to assembly. Okay, so the winner is black enamel. Based on what I had on hand, I had red or green or satin silver, but this has got quite a bit of dark black in it with some pearlescence. So I want to put the tip in here, lay your parts out. You've got to get them all out of these little bags. Get all your pieces out of their little baggies. For a slimline kit, there's quite a few pieces, but it's not that complicated. So you've got this piece that goes over your clip, and it goes in the tail, or it goes in the clicker end of the pen. So I'll set that out and have that ready. So then the tip goes in this narrow end, and then the transmission with the threads out go in here, and there's only one trick to pressing that transmission in, is you press it only far enough so that when this turns, the tip hides and extracts. So let me go press this together and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've got that pressed together. I've got a really nice transition right there. So now I need to go put the transmission in. You can pre-test the transmission to make sure what goes in there. There's a line here, but that's not necessarily the indicator of how deep it goes. And I pressed this together on a big metal vise with wooden jaws that I built for it. People press stuff together on their drill press, or you can buy a pen assembly press. Whatever you find that works. I've heard of people even using a clamp like this. If you're careful, you can put a little bit of pressure on here, press that together, but you run the risk there. So anyway, that went in partially, not even straight enough really, but you can see as the transmission turns that's not in quite enough yet. So I'm going to go on my nice wooden jaws and just clamp this down just a tiny bit more. Okay, you can see when the transmission is out, well, I've put the tip in here and tighten it up. The transmission's in there. You can see when the tip's out, it looks good and natural. Twist it back, the tip's in there. And I know I've done this a long time, but I got that absolutely perfect on my about 7th try. I put it in a little bit, tested it, put it in a little bit, tested it, put it in a little bit, tested it. I've heard of making a block of wood about this long so that you can put it in your vise, clamp it down until you get to that block of wood, and then you're very close. Now I'll go back to my orientation where my arrows are. This is still on my mandrel. And I'm going to take it off. I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to recognize that this is where my clip goes. And the only other trick you've got, this is kind of bland here. This is kind of spicy here, kind of pearlescent. So you can line up, you know, kind of have your clip cover something if you think it's not as exciting to look at as the other part of the pen. So now I'm going to just go back to my vise, press that in. Now you can see the pearl part and the pearl part, and the nice black clip. Orientation I don't have much to worry about now, but because I made this to use a band, the band just slides on and the pen just slides together. So we've got kind of a funky looking pen. Because we were so worried about orientation, we can see if we can get any of the grain to line up. If this was wood and you had grain going from there to there, you definitely want to try and line it up, but the way this pen is, it's just kind of out there. But that's a basic slimline pen with a little waist in it. Cat likes it. That's Jojo the shop cat. So we got that made. We got a few more to do. If you have questions, if you have interest in where I get the blanks or how I drill them or whatever, one tip on assembly is make sure you got all the glue out of the ends before you start pressing it together. And I did a pretty good job when I was cleaning the glue out of them, but you could end up splitting them, and that's the worst, is to split the tip or crack something when you assemble it, because you get it out of a line. Or there's the final pen. So good luck making pens. If you have questions, let me know. Please subscribe, share my videos. Having fun making this series.